all of that. We were having a lively conversation, about Aunt Jemima and pancake boxes and imagery and stuff. And I wanted to talk to you about food, so it was a nice segue into it. There's this article about ultra processed foods raising the risk of developing and dying from cancer. There's overly processed foods, which we know about, but also now, which I'm learning, that there's food fraud going on. So like you may think you're buying ginger or turmeric or cumin, and because there's not enough of it out there to actually, process, they are doing some really horrific things for money. So some of the maple syrup and honey that you think is like, because maple syrup is expensive. You could spend like $25 for a little bottle of maple syrup.
The real
Not
stuff.
all of that. The good stuff, but sometimes it's not the good stuff. They just put the bad stuff in the bottle, like some of them bottled waters. I'm not going to say who, it's tap water, and then they make you pay $1 for the tap water. Olive oil, extra virgin, it's a big deal. But sometimes they put canola oil, they mix it in because they don't have enough. I mean, there's some stuff going on. I don't know how the juice out there, the 100% pomegranate juice, just because it says that on the label. But here's the scary part for me, the spices, because I'm now like leaning in. And when I can't get or when I don't feel like it, because gingers work for me, I got to peel it and grate it and all that. I like the powder. You do have a nice ginger turmeric powder, but they are doing something now, like fake crushing up some things and then spray painting it orange. And the spray paint or the paint that they're using has chemicals in it that can cause cancer. Well, how do we eat, Dr. Ahmed? What do we do about this?
It feels like nothing. Feels like don't eat anything, right? But that's not true. Howard Jones, Howard Jones, the singer from the 80s, had a song called "Everything Gives You Cancer."
No, what?
It's a fun song. I mean, I'm that punk girl, so I like this.
You said that's a fun song. Everything gives you cancer. Y'all was singing that?
Tongue in cheek. It's hilarious. And it does feel like, everything gives you cancer. There's no cure. There's no answer. That's part of the lyrics. It just feels like, well, what do I have if I can't have anything? We don't have to think of it so fatalistically. I mean, there are some things that we can do to make sure that we're not duped by food fraud. That's really what it amounts to.
How do we do that?
I love this conversation that you brought to me today, because what happens is this puts us right in line with having been the labor that built this country, having been the labor in other countries that are supplying the things, because principally these things are from tropical and subtropical regions, right? So whether it's coffees or teas or turmerics or ginger, chocolate, right? Vanilla, the sugars, all of it, right? There are just a huge variety of things that Black and brown hands are farming. And the further we get away from knowing our brothers and sisters who are farming these things and the effect on their lives, it adversely affects our lives. Look at that. It's connected.
So last time you were here, you told us about some herbs that we can grow, and I went out and bought seed to get, because 4 of them, I did not know that I could eat them. I didn't know how beneficial they were to our health. And I was like, I'm in. And I thank you for that, because I was, when you said 5, I was like, I know these 5, and I didn't. I was like, oh, okay. I'm learning. I love learning.
Right. Well, I love that you said that. When we talk about the herbs, I mean, do you feel like when you taste some really great ginger, you can tell the difference?
I don't know that my palate is sophisticated. I mean, I grew up in a household where we ate pork and beans and rice. That was my father's go-to: pork and beans and rice out of the can, and a processed veal patty with some American cheese on it. That was Wednesday was Chinese food. My father loved some shrimp egg foo young. Okay. So we got that on Wednesday. I introduced like broccoli and stuff into my family's diet, because I'm like, I can't, my gallbladder's gone. I got to eat differently. So my palate, and it started with the tea. It started because my dad and I used to drink tea with a lot of sugar and a lot of milk in it, sometimes even some carnation milk. Boy, that was delicious, but not good. But it started with my, liking tea without sugar and seeing what where my palate grew.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could tell the difference between really good ginger and bad ginger.
Yeah, I bet you could now. You've moved into a space where having tea with laden with sugar and laden with milk. Now you're going to another place where maybe you're using oat milk in it. Maybe you are having a higher quality of product in your life, and you could tell the difference. You know what it's like? It's like growing up on American cheese food. Uh, cheese food slices, not cheese food, right? That's part of the fraud of fooling people in their minds. No cheese involved, just cheese food. Growing up on a grilled cheese sandwich made out of that, and then you get to the place where you're using an actual other kind of cheese as an adult. And when you try to go back and eat that American cheese slice, it tastes like plastic, right? You can't, it's unpalatable at that point. So I believe you really could tell the difference. And that's one of the ways that we can avoid food fraud, is by knowing that product. So if you know what really great olive oil tastes like, what you mentioned. Next door to us here at Calabash, we have some Sicilians and Neapolitan folks who have a Salamaria shop, a deli next door. So when I buy olive oil, it's from Sicily. It looks cloudy. It's just thick, and yeah, it costs more than a bottle of wine, but it's worth it, right? So we just have to get into the spaces of, once you taste that, you can't go back. When it's not correct.
Again, something costing a lot of money does not necessarily mean that it's good, because they're now passing off very expensive things. And it's not very expensive. They're putting the fraudulent product in. I agree with you. Getting your palate right,
Yeah.
decolonizing your tongue, which is the movement, right? Decolonizing your tongue.
Yeah.
What are some ways that people can start decolonizing their tongues?
Eating things that are outside of our parameters. So when you talked about rice and pork and beans, or egg foo young, we're talking about things that are primarily like maybe a little bit sour because of the tomato. And we're talking about a lot of salt. That's a lot of salt. And once we break out of that into something, doesn't have to be sweet or salty, it can be bitter, it can be earthy, it can have umami, it can have like that sort of umami is like sort of that mushroom flavor of something that isn't quite earthy, but it's in between. These are the things that create a variety in our palate, and it signals the rest of our organs to get to work, right? So bitter things are cholinergic. They help our gallbladder, they help our liver to work. They all have purpose. And by the time it hits your tongue, the body's like, got it, I'm gone, I'm off to the races, I'm getting this healing started. But when we only have sweet and salty, that becomes the problem. So anybody could put anything over on us. We don't know the bitterness, the beautiful bitter spiciness that is real turmeric, or we are not drinking things that have pepper in it because we're not accustomed to that flavor, or bitter or earthy. And that becomes a problem. So the best way is to start tasting all of those tastes and give them to young people in our lives. I love it when we just let those people do, the young people, just let them taste things. When folks come in and say, well, oh, you won't like that, will you, little Willie, because that might be too spicy for you. Let them taste it. He's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. And what's so funny is the children love the kombucha. They love other stuff that we have. Let them do it. And that way we're growing up with those flavors that are our traditional flavors, are principally these food fraud flavors.